Hi, everybody, and welcome to this foundational training that we have for you this week, Becoming the Cycle Breaker, and laying the foundation, solid foundations that you need to start really implementing changes. And I'm going to start in module one talking about the child's brain, because it's very important to understand the actual brain development of the child so that we can understand how outdated ways of parenting are potentially harmful to the emotional development and well-being of a child. So I'm going to particularly focus on the ages of 2 to 7 because, children up until 2 years old are pretty they're cute and cuddly, and they don't push our boundaries as much. And it's from between that 2 to 7 age that they really do push our boundaries. And that is because they do not have any logic. They do not have any reasoning. They're like sponges. They're in the pre-operational brain development phase in these years. So that they are like sponges. They're in that way. Their brain is in that state so that they can absorb everything. They can learn fast. And, that's why they say it's best to teach multiple languages at this age, because they are just absorbing everything and taking it all in, all of their environment. They don't have that sort of conscious filter. It's all just going straight into the subconscious mind. And so, because they're in that state, that to be able to learn so much, they don't have the logic reasoning of the conscious mind. They don't have that filter. And so that's why, they don't understand patience, and they don't understand, what's the word I'm trying to say? The logical thinking of I can eat a banana with the peel on or without the peel on, and it doesn't make any difference, or there's no difference between squares and triangles when we cut a sandwich. They're very illogical, and it's just all humans at that age. And so so that they run purely on emotions, purely on the feelings that they feel as they experience the world. And that's why we have so many big feelings, because they don't understand that if they share their toy for 5 minutes, that they're going to get another turn. Or they don't understand that you've got to do something for 10 minutes and then you're going to go to the park. Or they need to leave the park so that they can come home and have dinner. Like there is just no real logical reasoning a lot of the time. And so, yeah, it's just really important to understand this. So they run purely on emotion. And so when we're talking about the sort of outdated ways of parenting, so just things that used to be widely accepted and still are amongst a lot of people, a lot of families. And, they are the things like punishment such as time out, being sent to the bedroom, having things taken away from them, hitting, just yelling and screaming at them. Those sorts of things are all potentially quite emotionally damaging to their well-being. And I'm going to explain why. So when a child is exhibiting a behavior, doing something that we don't necessarily approve of or deem as acceptable, they're doing it because of an unmet need. And those unmet needs can be various. But children are not out to make our lives miserable. They're not out to do everything in their power to upset us. They simply aren't. However, if they have unmet needs, now it might be that they are tired, they're not getting enough sleep, they're hungry, they have food intolerances which are making them feel yuck in their bodies, but they don't know how to communicate with that with us. Their emotional needs aren't being met. They don't get enough time with you. They don't get enough one-on-one interaction. They don't feel that you pay enough unconditional attention to them, undivided attention to them. And obviously there's various reasons why we might not be able to give them that attention. And I completely understand. But the fact is, kids crave our attention. They want us to be there, engaging with them whilst they play, or watching them whilst they play. They simply need that. It might be that they are feeling, for whatever reason, that another member of the family is more important to them, such as when a new sibling comes along. And so when they have unmet needs, then they start to act out because they don't understand their needs. They don't understand that they have an unmet need. All they know is the feeling. I feel imbalanced. I feel like something is missing, but they don't understand that, and they don't know how to communicate that. So they will do whatever they can to get your attention. Like, we all know when we're tired, we become more grumpy and irritable. And the same goes with them. They're getting upset over everything and they start hitting or biting or whatever it is they may be doing. It's an unmet need. They need to go to bed. Now, whether or not they do go to bed, that's another story, but we need to identify that they are tired. And that's why they're behaving in that way. And so when a child has an unmet need, and so then they display the behavior to try and get your attention, to try and release the pent-up energy that they have within them. And then that is met with the punishment. Now, it doesn't matter how much we can try and explain to them why we're doing the punishment, but when a child is yelled at, screamed at, blamed, and hit for their emotions or their behavior, they don't learn to stop that behavior because it was wrong or not acceptable for whatever reason. They learn that when they did that, they were a bad person. You didn't love them anymore. They weren't loved. They weren't accepted. That what they did made them bad. They're not good enough. And so, and they get scared. They feel the emotion of, Mummy and Daddy don't love me anymore. I'm not accepted when I do this. And if you are trying to logically explain to them why the behavior was not appropriate, whilst they might be nodding and taking it in, that feeling is still trumping the logic, because in a battle between emotional logic, rule of the mind, in a battle between emotion and logic, emotion will always win. So it doesn't matter how much you say to them, you can't hit your brother because it hurts, but when you hit them, well, how confusing is that? Like if they're biting or they're shitting or whatever, and then you give them a smack on the bum, they're not going to learn that their biting is not okay, but your hitting is okay. That is extremely confusing. They're not going to learn that it's not okay to do the thing. They're just going to learn that they weren't loved when they did the thing. And there's a big difference there, because it all comes down to the meanings that we make from the events that we experience in our life. And so experience getting hit or yelled at over and over and over and over and over and over and over again in your life, and every time that happens, it's, I'm not loved, I'm not good enough, they don't love me, they don't love me, they don't love me, they don't love me. And even though you are also showing them love and compassion and everything in other areas of their life and at other times, we still have this battle going on. They get confused about themselves and they start trying to work out, well, what do I need to do in order to be loved? And then they start thinking that they need to change as a person in order to feel accepted and loved. And the same goes for timeouts, being sent to the bedroom, being sent away for timeout. When they've experienced a behavior, or they're having a big feeling, a big emotion, and they get sent away, They learn that they're rejected. Now, one of the basic survival instincts of humans is we need to feel accepted and loved, and we avoid rejection at all costs, because when we're born, if we were to be rejected by our parents and our caregivers, we would die. We cannot take care of ourselves. And the same thing goes as a small child. They can't just walk out the door and go find, something different. They need to be accepted by their caregivers, accepted for all parts of who they are. And when they display certain behaviors and we send them away, well, they learn that part of them is actually being rejected. So that part of them that mustn't be a good part of them. They're not allowed to have that part of them. And so then we start shutting down certain parts of ourselves, and that's how we lose ourselves. We need to learn how to be and navigate in the world in what's a socially acceptable, polite sort of way. But we don't want to shut down parts of ourselves. We don't want to say, okay, well, that part of me is bad. No part of us is bad. We just need to learn how to manage it. We need to learn how to manage our emotions. And when we get sent away, when we get spanked, when we get yelled at, we shut down. We don't learn healthy ways of experiencing our emotions, and we don't learn to stop doing the behaviors. We just learn that we're not accepted, we're not loved, we're not good enough, we're a bad person. And trust me, every single one of my clients has gone back to scenes in their life when they've experienced the sorts of things that we're talking about here, and they're the feelings, the meaning that they make of the situation. They're not loved, they're not accepted, they're not good enough. And so then we carry that with us until we become aware and heal that and overcome it. We carry that with us. And so going into school, we go into school thinking, okay, well, now I need to bend myself and mold myself in order to feel accepted. And I need to do what the teacher says and do what everybody else is doing in order to feel accepted. Because if I don't, well, then I'm going to be rejected and I'm not going to be loved. I'm not going to be good enough and I'm not going to fit in. So, yeah, sorry, I'm just thinking now. So I think I've covered most things that I wanted to just there. But I just wanted to go on to, well, what's the alternative? And I really am not about giving parental advice, but I am about supporting children to develop a strong foundational sense of self. That's what it is about. It's developing the sense of self from the very young age and being able to continue to develop the sense of self and being okay with every part of who they are and learning to accept all of who they are and feeling free to express themselves, feeling free to be them, so that they don't start shutting down parts of themselves. Because when they start shutting down parts of themselves, well, we start blocking our intuition, we stop loving ourselves, we start thinking that there's something wrong with us and that we need to change. And then obviously that leads to a whole bunch of complications. As we grow, we may end up in relationships that are not safe, we're taken advantage of, or it's not reciprocal. We may end up thinking that we're not good enough to pursue our dreams, that our dreams aren't good enough. We may feel too shy and have a low confidence and a low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, and the list goes on. And there are a number of resources that I could lead you to support this. I'll start with saying Gab or Mate. Anything on him, anything that he does, has written or everything, it all talks about childhood trauma and how the ways that we were raised, the outdated ways, the traumatic effects that it has. And it follows people like drug addicts specifically. He works with a lot of addicts to heal their childhood trauma. And that's another thing. It very well leads to addiction. I know it did for me. And the Holistic Psychologist is another great one. She has heaps of free content on Instagram and YouTube. I do recommend you check her out. She explains things really well in terms of, you know, how our childhoods were impacted. So if we could just get our internal being into a state where we could set the boundary with our child. So I'm not saying we're going to let them hit their brother or throw cups of milk on the floor or whatever it is that they're doing that you don't potentially want them to do. However, setting the boundary, but holding them through it. Instead of setting the boundary and then they start resisting and then you start yelling and they start yelling and screaming and you start yelling and screaming and then it's all amplified, skyrocketed, everyone's losing it and you send them to their room or whatever it may be. And I know I'm using the word you a lot. I just want to reiterate, there is no judgment. There is absolutely no judgment because we've all done it. We've all been there. We're all learning. We're all trying to do better, especially if you're here watching this. And that is the biggest thing. So instead of it going like that, if you could just, in your internal being, get yourself to a place of acceptance for the child, accepting them in all of their big feelings, in all of their resistance, and meeting them, validating their feelings, accepting their feelings, but also sharing your feelings. And fair enough, there may be tears, there may be hitting and kicking and all those sorts of things. But if we can hold them through that, be with them, and wait for them to come out the other side, the longer, if we can keep our cool, the shorter that challenging period is. From my experience, 100%, the more I can keep my cool, the easier it is. And it's a consistency game. The more often I show up keeping my cool, the easier it becomes. Because my kids know that they're safe. And so when they know that they're safe, they know that they're safe to express their feelings, they know that they're safe to just have that moment, to let themselves be themselves in that moment. Then once that moment has passed, we can sit down and have the logical conversation of explaining why we had to put the boundary in place. And when the relationship is still intact, meaning, yes, you've upset them, we put the boundary in place, we've upset them, but we haven't rejected them because of their feelings. We haven't made them feel unloved, unsupported. We haven't made them feel like they're a bad person for having their feelings. Instead, we made them feel valid in their feelings. We made them feel loved. They were still loved whilst having their feeling. They were still accepted whilst having their feeling. So then when it comes to having that logical conversation, there is more connection, there is more love, there is more understanding, there is more trust. It's a strong connection between caregiver and child. And with that trust and that connection, That's where true learning flourishes. That's where they learn the boundary because of the reasons why the boundary was put in place. It's unsafe. They learn it for the right reasons. They don't learn it because they're too afraid to not be accepted or to be emotionally hurt. And this, especially in that age of 2 to 7, this is a consistency game. We need to continue to do that. Continue. Because it is that consistency where children feel safe. They don't know, is mum going to lose her shit at me today, or is she going to be there for me? They know that you're always going to be there for them. And that's where those true, amazing connections develop that last into adulthood. That is where we provide that true, loving, safe, supportive environment where our children feel safe to be all of who they are and remain connected to their inner being, to their intuition, so that when they do go to school, when they do go out into the world, they are confident, they are more confident, they feel that it is okay for them to be who they are. Because that's what it is like for them at home. They don't know any different. So I hope that has made sense and has provided any clarity where there may have been confusion. And if there are still any more questions or questions, concerns, anything like that, then please feel free to reach out to me in my DM. You're always welcome there. You can also just comment with your experience and your thoughts on the video, and we can engage conversation and get people talking about their experiences or their thoughts, and hash things out where people might feel conflicted. So yes, that's all for module 1 today, and watch out for module 2 tomorrow, where we talk about understanding your triggers. So today's module was more focused on the child, and the rest of the modules are going to be more focused on you. Until tomorrow, take care, and thank you so much for your time and watching, and thank you for doing this work, because it is the most important work there is to do. Because in doing this work, we are allowing a completely new way of being to flourish within humanity. And the more we lead by example, and our children grow up to lead by example, the more of the ripple effect it has. So until tomorrow, take care.